I think I didn't do anything wrong, just played along with a silly party dare and kissed his friend for a laugh. But the next thing I knew, my husband was handing me divorce papers, saying I'd crossed a line I could never come back from. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The restaurant's back room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses as our friend group celebrated Jessica's promotion. I'd been looking forward to this night for weeks, a chance to let loose after months of feeling invisible at home and unappreciated at work. At 32, I felt like I was disappearing into the background of my own life, watching everyone else have fun while I played the responsible wife and mother. Truth or dare, someone shouted over the music, and suddenly we were all 20-something again, giggling like teenagers. The wine had loosened everyone up, and I felt more alive than I had in months. Simon sat beside me, nursing his beer with that familiar, distant expression he'd worn so often lately. Even at parties, he seemed to retreat into himself. "Avanthi," Jessica pointed at me with her martini glass. "Your turn, truth or dare?" "Dare," I said without hesitation, earning cheers from the group. I caught Simon's slight frown but ignored it. For once, I wanted to be the fun one, the spontaneous one everyone remembered. Jessica's eyes sparkled with mischief as she glanced around the room. "I dare you to kiss the hottest guy here who isn't your husband." The room erupted in laughter and wolf whistles. I felt my cheeks flush, but not with embarrassment, with excitement. When was the last time anyone had called me daring? When had Simon last looked at me like I was exciting or unpredictable? "Come on, that's not fair," Simon said quietly, his hand touching my arm. "Let's just—" "Oh, don't be such a stick in the mud," I laughed, pulling away from his touch. "It's just a game, Simon. Live a little." The group murmured agreement, and I saw several people exchange glances. I knew what they were thinking, that Simon was uptight, that he couldn't handle his wife having fun. The thought stung because part of me agreed with them. My eyes landed on Liam Drake, Simon's best friend since college. At 33, Liam had maintained his gym instructor physique and easy smile. He was leaning against the bar, watching the scene unfold with amusement. "Liam it is," I announced, standing up with theatrical flair. "Avanthi, please," Simon said, his voice tighter now. "This isn't—" "What? It's not what?" I turned to face him, feeling bold and reckless. "It's not serious. You're right, it's just a silly dare. Don't make it weird." Liam pushed off from the bar, grinning. "Hey, I'm game if you are. It's just for fun, right?" The crowd cheered as I walked over to him. In that moment, I felt powerful, desired, the center of attention in a way I hadn't been in years. Simon's discomfort only made me more determined to prove I wasn't the boring housewife everyone saw me as. "Just for fun," I agreed, placing my hands on Liam's chest. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt electric. Not because of Liam, because of the audience, the rebellion, the way I was finally doing something unexpected. When we broke apart, the room exploded in cheers and applause. I turned back to find Simon's chair empty. "Where did he go?" I asked, scanning the room. "He left," Jessica said, her excitement dimming slightly. "Right after you. You know." I felt a flicker of guilt but pushed it down. "He's probably just getting some air. He'll be fine. It was just a dare." The party continued, but something had shifted. A few people seemed uncomfortable, while others praised me for being such a good sport. I tried to recapture the earlier excitement, but Simon's absence cast a shadow over everything. When I finally tried calling him an hour later, it went straight to voicemail. I arrived home after midnight to find the house dark, except for the kitchen light. Simon's car was in the driveway, but he wasn't in our bedroom. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, still fully dressed, staring at his phone. "There you are," I said, trying to sound light and casual. "Why did you leave so early? You missed the best part of the party." He looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but something colder. "Did I?" "Oh, come on, Simon. Don't tell me you're actually upset about that silly dare." It meant absolutely nothing. Everyone was laughing. It was just harmless fun. Before he could respond, headlights swept across our front window. Car doors slammed, and I heard familiar voices approaching. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked, but Simon was already walking to the front door. Margaret and Paul Maris stood on our doorstep, his parents' faces grim in the porch light. My stomach dropped. Margaret's usually perfect composure was cracked, her lips pressed into a thin line I'd seen only once before, when Simon's brother had been arrested for drunk driving. "Mom, Dad," Simon said quietly. "Come in." "We heard," Margaret said, her eyes finding mine immediately. "Carol Jenkins called me. She was at your party tonight." My face burned. Carol was one of Margaret's bridge partners, a notorious gossip who must have witnessed everything. Of course she'd run straight to Simon's mother with the story. "I can explain," I started, but Margaret held up her hand. "Explain what, exactly? How you humiliated my son in front of your friends. How you kissed another man while wearing his wedding ring. It was just a dare." The words came out sharper than I intended. "A silly party game. I can't believe everyone is making such a big deal out of this." Paul, who rarely spoke during family conflicts, stepped forward. "A big deal?" His voice was quiet but cutting. "You publicly disrespected your marriage, Evanthi, in front of people we know, in front of Simon's best friend." "I didn't disrespect anything," I shot back, feeling cornered. "Simon is being ridiculous. It was 10 seconds, it meant nothing, and if he wasn't so insecure, he'd see that everyone was just having fun." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face went white, then red. "Insecure?" she repeated, her voice dangerously low. "My son is insecure because his wife kissed another man for entertainment." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Simon spoke for the first time since his parents arrived. His voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. "Explain to me what it was like, Evanthi." I looked around the room at their faces, Margaret's fury, Paul's disappointment, Simon's terrible calm. They were all against me, making me the villain in a story that should have been forgotten by morning. "Fine," I said. "You want to know what it was like? It was like finally feeling alive for 5 minutes. It was like being seen as something other than a boring housewife. It was like having fun for once, instead of sitting quietly while my husband ignores me all evening." "So this is my fault?" Simon asked. "I didn't say that, but when was the last time you looked at me the way those people looked at me tonight? When did you last make me feel exciting, or desired, or even interesting?" Margaret made a sound of disgust. "So you kissed his best friend to get attention?" "I kissed his best friend because it was a harmless dare, and I'm tired of being treated like I'm made of glass." I was yelling now, but I couldn't stop. I'm tired of walking on eggshells, tired of being the perfect wife who never does anything spontaneous or fun. It was one kiss, it meant nothing, and if Simon can't handle that, maybe the problem isn't with me. The room fell silent again. Simon studied my face for a long moment, then asked quietly, "Would you do it again?" The question caught me off guard. What? If the same situation happened tomorrow, same dare, same crowd, same choice, would you kiss him again? I opened my mouth to say no, of course not, but something stopped me. The honest answer was more complicated. I'd felt so alive in that moment, so free and desired and powerful. Why should I have to give that up? "It's a hypothetical question," I said instead. "It wouldn't happen again." That's not what I asked. I could feel them all watching me, waiting. The smart thing would be to apologize, to grovel, and promise it would never happen again. But I was tired of being smart, tired of being the one who always backed down. "I don't know," I said finally. "Maybe, if it was just for fun, if it didn't mean anything. I don't know why that should threaten you so much." Margaret gasped. Paul shook his head slowly. Simon just nodded, like I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. "I see," he said. "Thank you for being honest." He walked his parents to the door, speaking to them in low voices I couldn't hear. When he came back inside, I was waiting in the kitchen, ready to continue the fight, to make him understand. But he walked right past me toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" I called after him. "To the guest room," he said without turning around. "I need to think." "Simon, wait." "I need to think, Avanthi. Please, just let me think." I stood alone in the kitchen, the taste of victory turning sour in my mouth. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to realize he was overreacting, apologize for being jealous, and we'd laugh about it in the morning. Instead, I heard the guest room door close with a quiet click that somehow sounded final. By Monday morning, the story had spread through our social circle like wildfire. My phone buzzed constantly with texts, some supportive, others clearly fishing for details. At work, conversations stopped when I entered rooms, and I caught co-workers whispering by the coffee machine. "Ignore them," my sister Dara texted me during lunch. "They're just jealous you had the guts to have some fun. Simon needs to grow up." But it was hard to ignore when the gossip followed me everywhere. My boss, Linda, called me into her office around 2 p.m. "Avanthi," she said, closing the door behind us, "I need to address something that's come to my attention." My stomach clenched. "What's that?" "There's been some chatter about your weekend activities. Now, normally I wouldn't get involved in personal matters, but when it affects workplace morale—" "It was just a party," I said quickly. "A silly dare that got blown out of proportion." Linda nodded slowly. "I'm sure it was innocent, but perception matters in HR, you understand? We need to maintain professional standards." The implication was clear. My reputation was now a liability. I spent the rest of the day crafting careful responses to the whispers, explaining to anyone who'd listen that it was just harmless fun, that Simon was overreacting, that people were making something out of nothing. That evening, I decided to take control of the narrative. I posted on Facebook, "Funny how having a little fun at a party makes you the villain. Some people need to learn the difference between harmless games and actual problems. No regrets. Live your life." The responses were mixed. Several friends liked and commented supportively, but others remained notably silent. Simon's friends, our mutual friends for years, seemed to have vanished entirely. My mother called within an hour of the post. "Avanthi Marie, what on earth are you doing?" Lenore's voice was tight with panic. "Delete that post right now." "Why? I'm just setting the record straight." "You're making things worse. The whole family is talking. Your Aunt Susan called. The neighbors are asking questions. This is becoming a scandal." "It's only a scandal because people are being ridiculous," I snapped. "It was one kiss at a party. In some countries, that's how people say hello." "In some countries, you're not married to someone else." Mom's voice rose. "Avanthi, you need to apologize to Simon immediately. Fix this before it goes too far." "I'm not apologizing for having fun. If Simon can't handle his wife being social and spontaneous—" "This isn't about being social. This is about respect, about marriage, about—" She took a shaky breath. "Just fix it, Avanthi. Please." But I wasn't ready to fix anything. Instead, I spent the evening messaging friends privately, giving them my version of events. I told them how Simon had been distant lately, how he'd embarrassed me by storming out, how his family was turning this into something it wasn't. "He's being so dramatic," I wrote to Jessica. "You were there. It was obviously just a game. I think he's looking for an excuse to cause problems." Most of my friends seemed sympathetic, agreeing that men could be jealous and irrational. It felt good to have support, to know I wasn't crazy for thinking this was all overblown. When Simon came home from work that night, he was polite but distant. He helped our daughter June with her homework, made dinner, and went through the motions of normal family life. But he didn't look at me directly, didn't engage in conversation beyond logistics. "How long are you going to keep this up?" I asked after June went to bed. "Keep what up?" "The silent treatment, the cold shoulder, punishing me for one silly moment." He was loading the dishwasher, his movements careful and methodical. "I'm not punishing you, Avanthi. I'm thinking." "About what? There's nothing to think about. It happened. It's over. It didn't mean anything." "If it didn't mean anything, why did you do it?" The question frustrated me. Because it was a dare. Because sometimes people do things for fun without analyzing them to death. He nodded slowly, still not looking at me. I see. Do you? Because I'm starting to think you're enjoying this drama, making me into the bad guy so you can play the victim. That made him pause. He turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Is that what you think I'm doing? I think you're making this into something. It's not because you want to punish me for having friends, for being social, for not being the perfect little housewife who sits quietly in the corner. Evanthi, he said, quietly, you kissed my best friend in front of a room full of people. You told me you might do it again. You posted on social media about having no regrets. What exactly am I supposed to think? You're supposed to trust me. You're supposed to know that I love you, that I would never actually cheat, that it was just a stupid game. But you might do it again. I said I don't know. It was a hypothetical question. Why are you holding me to some impossible standard? He stared at me for a long moment, then turned back to the dishes. I'm going to stay at my parents' house tonight. What? Why? Because I need space to think, and I can't do that here. What about June? You can't just abandon your daughter because you're having a tantrum. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'll pick her up for school tomorrow, and we'll figure out a schedule. A schedule? My voice went shrill. Simon, you're being ridiculous. This is our home, our family. You can't just leave because my wife publicly kissed another man and sees nothing wrong with it. He closed the dishwasher and turned to face me. Because she's more concerned with defending her actions than understanding why they hurt me. I'm not going to apologize for living my life. I'm not asking you to apologize for living your life. I'm asking you to consider that your life affects other people, that your choices have consequences. The only consequence should be everyone having a good laugh and moving on. You're the one making this into a federal case. He picked up his keys from the counter. I'll be back tomorrow evening to spend time with June. We can talk more then if you want. Don't you dare walk away from me, Simon Maris. But he was already heading for the door. I followed him, my anger building with each step. This is exactly what I'm talking about, I shouted as he reached his car. You can't handle one moment of spontaneity, 1 second where I'm not completely under your control. He paused with his hand on the car door. Is that really what you think this is about? What else could it be? You're threatened because for 5 minutes I was the center of attention instead of you, because someone else found me attractive and exciting. Evanthi, he said, and his voice was so sad it almost made me stop. I've never been threatened by other people finding you attractive. I've been proud of it. But there's a difference between being attractive and acting on it. There's a difference between getting attention and encouraging it at your spouse's expense. I didn't. You did. And the fact that you can't see that, can't understand why I'm hurt, that's what I need to think about. He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing in our driveway in my pajamas, shaking with rage and something else I didn't want to name. Back inside, I found a printout on the kitchen counter. Screenshots of my Facebook post and some of the comments. Someone had printed them out and left them where I'd be sure to see them. Simon had been documenting everything. The next few days passed in a strange, tense routine. Simon came home each evening to spend time with June, helping with homework and bedtime stories, but he slept at his parents' house. During the day, he was polite, but distant, treating me like a roommate rather than his wife. June noticed immediately. Why doesn't Daddy sleep here anymore? She asked over breakfast, her 6-year-old eyes worried. Daddy and I are just having a silly disagreement, I told her, shooting a pointed look at Simon. Some people are being very dramatic about nothing. Simon's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond in front of June. Later, as he was leaving for work, he pulled me aside. Don't involve her in this. I'm not involving her in anything. I'm explaining why her father is suddenly acting like a stranger. I'm acting like someone who needs time to process what happened. What happened is that you're punishing our daughter because you can't handle your wife having friends and a socials life. He stared at me for a moment. Is that really how you see this? How else should I see it? You're the one who left. You're the one making this into a crisis. Evanthi, I need you to understand something. This isn't about the kiss itself. It's about what the kiss represents. It's about boundaries, about respect, about the fact that you don't seem to think our marriage deserves protection. Our marriage doesn't need protection from a silly dare. Our marriage needs protection from someone who thinks betraying it publicly is acceptable as long as it's fun. Betraying it? I laughed, but it sounded harsh even to me. You think one kiss is betrayal? What about emotional betrayal? What about a husband who's been distant and cold for months, who makes his wife feel invisible and undesired? What about that kind of betrayal? So this is my fault. I didn't say that, but maybe if you'd been paying attention to your wife, she wouldn't have been so excited by a little attention from someone else. The look he gave me was devastating, not angry, just deeply sad. I see, he said quietly. Thank you for clarifying. That afternoon I got a call from Margaret. We need to talk, she said without preamble. If you're calling to lecture me, I'm calling to tell you that you're destroying your family, and if you don't stop, you're going to lose everything. I'm not destroying anything. I'm the one trying to hold things together while your son throws a tantrum over nothing. Nothing? Margaret's voice was ice. You humiliated him publicly, Avanthi. You kissed another man in front of his friends, and then told him you'd do it again. You've shown no remorse, no understanding of how your actions affect others. And now you're involving June, making her think this is Simon's fault. It is Simon's fault. He's the one trying to save his marriage from someone who doesn't seem to value it. I value my marriage. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you value your ego more. I hung up on her, my hands shaking with rage. How dare she judge me? How dare any of them act like I was some kind of monster for one moment of spontaneity? But the conversation stayed with me, nagging at the edges of my consciousness. That evening, when Simon came home to see June, I tried a different approach. Maybe we should try counseling, I suggested as he helped June with a puzzle. He looked up, surprised. Counseling? Yes, clearly we're not communicating well. Maybe a professional could help us work through this misunderstanding. For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes. You'd be willing to do that? Of course. I want to save our marriage, Simon. I want us to be happy. That would... Yes, I think that could help. I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was how I'd fix things. We'd go to counseling. The therapist would explain to Simon that he was overreacting, and we could move past this ridiculous drama. I made the appointment for the following week, already planning what I'd say, how I'd explain that Simon had trust issues, that he was threatened by my friendships, that he needed to learn to be more secure and supportive. But when the day came, I cancelled. Not because I didn't want to go, I did, but because I realized the therapist might not see things my way. They might ask uncomfortable questions, might suggest I bore some responsibility for this situation, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I texted Simon. Had to cancel counseling, work emergency, we can reschedule. His response was immediate. What kind of emergency? Big project deadline moved up. You know how it is. But he didn't respond, and when he came home that evening, his demeanor had shifted again. He was polite but formal, like he was interacting with a difficult client rather than his wife. How was your emergency project? He asked while helping June with her bath. Fine, stressful. We got it handled. He nodded but didn't ask for details. Later, I overheard him on the phone with someone, speaking in low tones I couldn't make out. The weekend brought another blow. Simon came to pick up June for what he called daddy-daughter time, but when I suggested joining them, he politely declined. I think June needs some one-on-one time right now, he said. She's been asking a lot of questions. What kind of questions? About why things are different, about why I don't live here anymore, about whether Mommy and Daddy still love each other. What did you tell her? I told her that Mommy and Daddy are working through some problems, and that no matter what happens, we both love her very much. No matter what happens, I repeated. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm trying to prepare her for all possibilities. What possibilities? Simon, you're scaring me. He looked at me for a long moment. Am I? Because you seem pretty confident that this will all blow over, that I'll eventually come to my senses and pretend nothing happened. Nothing did happen, not anything that matters. And that, he said quietly, is exactly the problem. They left for their day together, and I spent the afternoon alone in our too quiet house, scrolling through social media and seeing happy families everywhere. Some of my friends had stopped commenting on my posts, I noticed. The supportive messages had dwindled. When Simon brought June home that evening, she ran to me with unusual intensity, clinging to my legs like she was afraid I might disappear. "Mummy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" she asked, her small voice muffled against my jeans. My heart stopped. "Who told you that word?" "Kids at school. They said when mommies and daddies fight and the daddy moves out, they get divorced." I looked over her head at Simon, who was watching us with an unreadable expression. We're not. I struggled to find words that weren't lies but wouldn't terrify her. "Daddy and I are just figuring some things out, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need time to think." "But you'll figure it out, right? You'll fix it." "Of course we will," I said, hugging her tight. "Everything will be fine." But when I looked at Simon again, he was already turning away. That night, after June was asleep, I found him in his office, our office, packing some of his things into boxes. "What are you doing?" "Getting some files I need," he said without looking up. "Simon, please, can't we just talk about this like adults? Can't we find a way to move forward?" He paused in his packing. "What would that look like to you, Avanthi, moving forward?" "It would look like you coming home, like us being a family again, like putting this whole silly incident behind us and focusing on what matters." "And what matters?" "Our marriage, our daughter, our life together." "And what about trust? What about respect? What about the fact that you still don't think you did anything wrong?" "Because I didn't. It was a dare, Simon. A silly party game. I'm sorry it hurt your feelings, but I can't apologize for living my life." He closed the box he'd been packing and looked at me directly for the first time in days. "Living your life," he repeated. "Is that what you call it?" "What would you call it?" "I'd call it choosing a moment of attention over your husband's dignity. I'd call it prioritizing strangers' entertainment over your family's stability. I'd call it betraying the trust of someone who loved you unconditionally." "Loved?" The past tense hit me like a slap. "Loved?" "Loves," he corrected quietly. "But love isn't always enough, is it?" He picked up his boxes and headed for the door. "Simon, wait. Please, don't do this to our family." "I'm not doing anything to our family. I'm trying to protect what's left of it." "From what?" "From someone who thinks marriage is a game where the rules don't apply if you're having fun." He left me standing in the empty office, surrounded by the gaps where his things used to be. Monday morning brought a knock at my door that changed everything. A courier stood on my doorstep with an envelope marked "Legal Documents, Signature Required." My hands shook as I signed for it, though I told myself it couldn't be what I thought it was. Simon wouldn't actually. We were just having a rough patch. People worked through these things. But the papers inside made it clear that Simon had moved beyond working through anything. Petition for legal separation was printed across the top in official, unforgiving font. Below that, motion for temporary custody arrangement. I sank onto the couch, reading through the legal language that reduced our marriage to a series of allegations and requests. Simon was asking for shared custody of June, temporary spousal support arrangements, and division of assets. It was all very civilized, very proper, and completely devastating. My phone rang immediately. Simon's lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, whose voice was professionally sympathetic but utterly unyielding. "Mrs. Maris, I'm calling to inform you that you've been served with separation papers. You have 30 days to respond, and I'd strongly recommend you obtain legal representation." "This is insane," I managed. "It was one kiss, one moment of poor judgment, and he's destroying our family over it." "Mrs. Maris, I can't discuss the specifics of the case, but I will say that my client has been very thorough in documenting the circumstances that led to this decision." "Documenting? What does that mean?" "You'll need to discuss that with your attorney. I've included a list of recommended family law practitioners with your papers. After she hung up, I called Simon immediately, but it went to voicemail. I tried his work number. Same thing. Finally, I called his mother. Margaret, you have to talk to him. He's gone completely insane. Have you seen the papers? Her voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. Of course I've seen them. How could you let him do this? How could you support him destroying our family over nothing? Over nothing. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. Ivanthi, do you have any idea what you've put him through? What you've put all of us through? I've put you through. All I did was kiss someone at a party. All you did was publicly humiliate your husband, show no remorse, blame him for your actions, lie about going to counseling, and then act like he's the problem for being hurt by it. I didn't lie about counseling. I had a work emergency. Did you? Because Simon called your office to reschedule, and Linda said you'd asked for the afternoon off to go to an appointment. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten about that. Forgotten that Simon knew my boss well enough to call directly. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? Like the misunderstanding where you told June that Daddy was being dramatic. Like the misunderstanding where you posted on social media about having no regrets. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My son tried to save his marriage, and you threw it back in his face. Now he's protecting himself and his daughter the only way he can. She hung up, leaving me alone with the papers and the growing realization that this was actually happening. I spent the rest of the day calling lawyers, most of whom couldn't see me for weeks. The few who could squeeze me in asked pointed questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Mrs. Maris, can you walk me through the events that led to this separation filing? How could I explain it without sounding terrible? How could I make them understand that it had been innocent, harmless, blown out of proportion? My husband is upset because I kissed someone at a party. It was a dare, completely meaningless, but he's acting like I had an affair. I see. And this was a friend of your husband's? His best friend, but that's not... And there were witnesses? It was at a party, so yes, but... And how has your husband responded to your explanations about the incident? He's been completely unreasonable. He moved out. He's barely speaking to me. He's involving our daughter in his drama. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a sharp suit, made notes as I spoke, but her expression grew more concerned rather than sympathetic. Mrs. Maris, I have to ask, do you feel you bear any responsibility for the current situation? Responsibility for what? For having fun at a party? For not letting my husband control every aspect of my social life? For the breakdown of trust in your marriage? There was no breakdown of trust. It was one kiss that meant nothing. If Simon wasn't so insecure and jealous, this wouldn't be an issue. Her lawyer's words still echoed in my head. If you don't see why this was hurtful, the court will. But I didn't see it. It was just a kiss. 10 seconds of meaningless fun. Everyone was acting like I'd burned the house down. That evening, I tried again with Simon, while he helped June with her homework. We need to talk, I said. He didn't even look up. My lawyer advised against private conversations. Simon, we're married. We can fix this. He set down the pencil and asked quietly, Do you love me? Of course I do. Do you respect me? I hesitated. What kind of question is that? The kind that matters, he said, because if you did, you wouldn't have done something that humiliated me. I tried to laugh it off. It was a game. You're overreacting. He looked at me for a long moment. When I asked if you'd do it again, why couldn't you say no? I don't know, I admitted finally. He nodded, calm but distant. Thank you for being honest. Then he packed a bag for June. She'll stay at my parents' this weekend, somewhere stable. After they left, I sat alone in the messy living room, wine in hand, scrolling through Facebook. Half my friends were gone. The comments had gone silent. For the first time, the isolation started to sink in. And for the first time, I wondered if everyone else was right. The mediation room felt like a punishment chamber disguised as civility. Simon sat across from me, calm and unreadable. his folder of evidence thick enough to end a marriage twice over. Dr. Kim, the mediator, asked me to explain my side. I called it a harmless kiss at a party. A stupid dare, nothing more. But Simon's evidence told another story. Screenshots, texts, posts about having no regrets, notes from June's teacher about her confusion and acting out. "Do you believe you made a mistake?" Dr. Kim asked. "I handled communication poorly," I said. "But Simon overreacted. I didn't ruin our family. He did." The room went silent. Simon's expression said everything. By the end, Dr. Kim recommended temporary custody to Simon, supervised visitation for me, and counseling to develop insight into my behavior. I tried to protest, insisting love should count for something. Dr. Kim just said softly, "Love isn't enough if it keeps hurting the child." Months later, after counseling and parenting classes, I sat in the same chair, watching Simon lead June out by the hand. She looked happy, safe. I told myself again it was unfair, that it had only been a kiss. But deep down, I finally knew the truth. It wasn't the kiss that cost me my family. It was believing it didn't matter. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.